Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. Today is September 18th, and we have a special guest, Mr. Dragos Stefanescu, who's here to talk about Friend.Tech, which has been dominating the meta over the last few months. So welcome.
What's up? Good to be here. Yeah. Friend.Tech has taken over my life. That's all I do.
It's actually taken over everything. So Friend.Tech has surpassed... I mean, you are essentially trading NFTs with Friend.Tech, but NFT volumes are pretty much dead, and Friend.Tech is on the rise. It's sucked up the last remaining amounts of liquidity from the NFT market, and now everybody's in Friend.Tech. So, like, what exactly is going on with Friend.Tech? I mean, I've tried it a little bit. You're like a power user now. So, like, what's the feeling that you're getting from actually like using the app on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, I think I've had a lot of debates over this, and I see a wide range of opinions. And people who usually dismiss it because it's pretty clear that they haven't really used it, or maybe it's not really their personal preference. I mean, I can understand that people are not that into it as I am. But once you become a power user, it's really addictive. Because I don't know how to describe it, but there's a few things going for it. One, it's very easy to connect with anyone, right? Because of the way the bonding curve is done, the rooms are pretty small unless you're like at a 2, 3, 4 ETH key price and you have like 150 people. But even then, it's really hard to get like a huge influx of new people into your room. So the rooms are quite small, and basically you pay less than 1 ETH or 1, 2 ETH, whatever, and you can talk to anyone. And it kind of evolves to the point where you've seen different celebrities or different people with high followings coming onto the platform, and their key price just trends up. But if they're not active, they just go down. Like, everyone FOMOs in whenever Steve Aoki or whoever joins the platform. But if they don't actually provide value, if they don't actually engage with their audience, people just sell the keys and they just gravitate to people who are active. So I think what you see is actually a friend of mine who I do the spaces with, Brett, he sent this tweet last night that really, I was kind of thinking about it that way, but it was never phrased to me like that. That because there's no, like, on Twitter you have like a universal feed, right? Like, you see what everyone's talking about and you have exposure to everyone. But this is basically just like very small rooms, kind of interlinked, because what I see as an information in one room, I relay it to another room. But I've noticed with a few, like, whenever, let's say, like a high value account with another key or a token or something to buy, I noticed that information lags a lot. And I was conditioned by Twitter to instantly react like, okay, if I see something on Twitter, that's the top, or I'm late to the information. But on Friend.Tech, you're actually not. So it's actually kind of like a walled garden that is very, very engaging. And once you start actually buying a lot of keys and staying in those rooms, it becomes very, very addictive. And one other thing that I would say, I've never had this much fun since DeFi summer. And two, I remember, I don't know if you guys had the same thing, when Uniswap came around, I was just buying and selling tokens. And some of the days I didn't have like a particular motive to buy or sell a token, but I was just doing it because I was so addicted to Uniswap. And it was such a cool new functionality. Like, hey, I can buy and sell tokens directly from my wallet. I don't have to send them to an exchange, wait for the transaction to confirm, etc. And now, I mean, I've never used step-in, so that's probably the other analogy. But it's the first time that I'm actually using mobile a lot in crypto. It's just like so addictive. You see someone, you don't have access to their room, you know, you want to buy them, you just click the buy button. The transaction is done in like a few seconds. And boom, you have access to their chat. So I think those are a few of the things that are going on for it.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to unpack there, right? And I think that maybe we can start quickly with kind of, have you seen any like ways that people are marketing where they're like offering special stuff inside the rooms? Like, is that a thing? Like, buy my keys and you get X? Do you see a lot of that at the top, or like, what's the meta for acquiring new users?
So I think there's like, I could probably classify them in, like, first of all, everyone kind of, okay, let's split it into. So there's people who already have a following, who have alpha in one way or another that you want exposure to. And then there's the people like myself who don't necessarily have a huge following, but they're grinding Friend.Tech really hard and they're trying to figure out a way to give value. Now, the ones who already have a following, you could look at someone like Rhino, for example, really good trader, doesn't do like the whole 3-3 meta of like buying back others' keys, but people hang out in his chat because he's like recognized as one of the best traders on CT, and people want exposure to that. Another really good trader, for example, Owen, 1 versus 9, really good trader. He doesn't necessarily do the 3-3 thing. He played a bit with it, but he recently sold a lot of his keys, and he might buy back. But what he did with Twitter alt, that he only accepts follows from people in his room. So there, he actually posts all his trades and stuff because it's easy for him. Like once he posts on his main Twitter, he just posts on his alt like more details and stuff, or like trades before he posts anywhere else. And for me, like I'm just talking to you from the perspective of someone who's doing the 3-3 a lot and is on Friend.Tech all the time. I have these guys' keys, they don't have my key, and I find it really hard to sell their keys because they actually give value. And then there's other people like Rect Gems or MetaQuant or Crypto Jamie, just the first few names that pop to my head, who have Telegram groups that you can join if you're in their rooms. And then I guess there's the aggregators. That's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of faded a bit lately, but it's basically people who hold a lot of the valuable keys, and they just aggregate all the info on Discord. And if you buy their key and hold it, you can join the Discord and you can have access to all the information on like the high value accounts on Friend.Tech. So that's
what do you think about the aggregators? Like, will they need to be shut down in the long term, or is it just one of those kind of like accepted parts of the app economy now?
I mean, I don't mind it, to be honest. I know Friend.Tech, I think they took some measures against some of them. Can't remember which ones exactly. I'm not really too fussed about aggregators, even though I have Hero's key, and I don't really check the Discord that much because it's not really the value for me in Friend.Tech is not about the information itself, and it becomes so hard to keep up with so much information. It's more about the connections that I can make and the access that I have to these people.
Yeah,
like that's way more valuable. And I think like there's some stuff built with aggregators that I think one use case that I think would be really cool with aggregators is, let's say for example, you want to find out, I'll give a random example, how people are positioning for Rollbit, right? Just a random example. If you could have an AI tool, and I know someone who's building this and it's really cool. If you can have an AI tool that plugs into all these rooms and ask ChatGPT like, hey, what's people's sentiment on token X? I think that's a really cool idea because then you could basically, it's like it takes you way too much time to manually go through all those rooms. But if you go on the thesis that Friend.Tech is all these small rooms, where like you'll see this with a lot of big names, they say Friend.Tech is a much more pleasurable experience because they don't have all the noise from Twitter. And I think the one-to-many way of chatting is brilliant, actually, because it's kind of like a blend between a Telegram group, but you don't get all the spam. But it's not an announcement channel either, because you can also talk and they can reply to your chats. So yeah, I think that's a really good application of this, because if you actually think there's going to be alpha shared, then you can like scour through all those groups and actually see what people think about different plays.
Yeah. And the other thing that kind of came up over this week is that the seems that there's, I don't know if it's griefing, if you want to call it, or self-farming, but people have started to buy their own keys over the past few days. And the self-driven TVL, according to Sector Analytics, has about $31 million. And it's about 13% of the total TVL of Friend.Tech right now. And notably, user vombatus.eth has over, we'll take a look at the Dune dashboard to get a live update. But he spent 590 ETH to buy his own keys. And it's it's pretty incredible, right? That he's done this, and he's doing this in a way to be able to essentially farm points. So, like, is this like a no-no, or what do you think about this? Like, is this going to change the meta for Friend.Tech going forward? They probably need to shut this down, or at least like devalue the points that are being given out for holding your own keys going forward, or have like a limit, like some sort of exponential limit where like the first like 3 or 4 are fine, but like holding 200 keys of your own just shouldn't really be able to farm points like that.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion around this, and I know Saka, for example, is really vocal about it. First of all, I was surprised. I don't know why I thought the self-buy TVL would be higher. I think the opinion is kind of skewed because you see these guys raking in points and you would think it's a bigger proportion of it, but it's 13%. So, okay, let's say if this didn't exist, you would get 13% more points last week, which is still, I think, disappointing for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are disappointed because their points rewards dropped, but TVL went like 3x in a week. So it's just like any other yield farm, you would expect the points to go down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, their strategy makes sense, right? If you think about it, why would you risk putting money across like 50 different keys and be exposed to the variation in that when you can just put 500 ETH and the most you can lose is 10%, because it's a 20% round tax, but 5% of that goes to yourself. So you're basically putting in 500 ETH. You're taking that. You're basically fine that of losing 50 ETH, but you're betting that your airdrop value is going to be way bigger than that, which I think it would be. The only counter argument to that would be that your key value, if people see that, will not grow in line with TVL. Whereas if you're actually good and like in the pulse of things with Friend.Tech, you could make an argument that you could track TVL. So like, for example, my portfolio went up 2x in the past 2-3 weeks. Like I'm up 2x on my buys. So had I put that amount of ETH in my own keys, I would get diluted far more than I am right now, because at least with more TVL coming through the platform, you could argue that my keys, like some of the keys that I hold, will be bought up, and my ratio within the platform, I don't think it would track TVL, but at least it wouldn't be, if TVL goes 3x, I get diluted 3x.
Yeah.
Maybe I get diluted 2x,
Well, there's not a lot of clarity in how the points are being dished out. I mean, some people have tried to like do backdated analysis on the points that they're receiving and try to track that across multiple accounts. But I think the opaqueness of the point system probably lends into farming, right? Because like in a typical DeFi farm, like you can analyze the code and come out and say like this is the most optimal way to deploy liquidity and take this much risk. But with Friend.Tech, the stuff that Vombatis is doing, I mean, maybe this week it's good. He's able to farm. The points distribution for self-farming is good for like a week, but then it's nerfed in the next week. But he doesn't really understand until the points come out at the end of the week. So there's the delay in the system plus the opaqueness of the farming rules or points rules really probably doesn't lend to this strategy for the long term.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it would be really risky to start doing that strat now. You have no idea if they're going to nerf it or not. I mean, Racer asked in his room what people's opinions is on this. Saka, who's like I think he made like 200K 2 days ago in fees that I've seen, and he's bought back everyone that bought him, and he's never defected on any one of those buys. And so he's been quite vocal about it. Yeah, I think that strategy is risky. Like for me, I'm actually going to write a Twitter thread about it today with the strategies that I see one can adopt on Friend.Tech. And I think, look, if you're here just to farm the airdrop, then fine, like do that. I think there's way more to gain from Friend.Tech. I think the first level is keys appreciation. If you're actually within the meta, you can actually grow your ETH portfolio in Friend.Tech, and that can actually give you like a cushion, like a safety cushion. The second level is like farming the points, which everyone's trying to do. And the third level, I think, which is the most important, is you're building big reputation and big networking opportunities for yourself. Like when you're actually playing what we call the 3-3 game, where you're buying everyone else who buys you, that's like an oversimplification. You don't have to like mindlessly buy and like sell everyone who buys or sells you. But basically it opens you up to a lot of accounts who are active on Friend.Tech, and you end up kind of creating this cluster of people who all think the same way and are very kind of have like the same mission and the same opinion when it comes to Friend.Tech. And it really enabled me to meet a ton of really, really sharp people. And I think the value that I get from meeting all those people and it's kind of like social signaling, right? Like I'm signaling that I'm a valuable member of the community and they reciprocate that, right? And then you get in all these conversations, and I think it really, really builds your network. Of course, for someone like Vombatus and everyone else, they're probably rich already. Maybe they don't care, and that's why I understand their approach. For someone like it's extremely valuable. I don't know if it's going to be nerfed or not. I'm hoping it would be nerfed, but also the solution that you presented is not. I thought it was a good idea when Levi said it in our spaces, but then Luke Martin had some writings about this, and there's this other guy, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he basically showed how many like the inflow of bots in the last few days is insane. And it's literally people are just farming by having like bots buy 2-3 keys and having like a web of bots just buying the same account and like buying each other. So even if you nerfed it, which I agree, like, after like 5 keys, nerf the impact of holding those. Okay, but then like these whales who hold like 100 of their own keys could just spin up like 50 of these bots. And then how do you track that and how do you nerf that? It's really hard. So I think maybe an option would be to skew it more towards your activity on the platform and kind of figuring out a way in which you can detect organic activity and the people who are, because that's what they want, right? Like they want people to become addicted to the app. They want people to use the app as much as possible. So again, we don't know what the formula is, but I think maybe kind of nerfing a bit the self buys and making it towards incentivizing activity within the app might be a good way to do it.
Yeah.
So
And go ahead, Garrett.
Yeah, I was just gonna follow up on a lot of these points you made. So count myself as like a big user of Friend.Tech, but not nearly as big as you. But I'm actually like releasing a big article today for my blog on like some of the mistakes I made. And one of the mistakes that I identified is I didn't buy my own keys when I first joined. It's because I didn't really know how like the app worked. Now I don't care about the airdrop one bit. Like I've never really profited much from an airdrop, and I like kind of write the value of that to effectively zero. But that being said, like I put in 0.01 ETH just to play with my account. And I was looking at the stats, and I'm almost up to 1 ETH in terms of like just the aggregate value of all the keys I bought. And I'm like a small fish compared to you. I'm like a 10th your size on Friend.Tech. So like it's not like because I'm like buying whales or anything, but just because I've like been steadily acquiring a bunch of users, I've managed to like make a bunch and reinvested it back into like buying keys of people who bought me. And it's like been awesome. And now I'm like in all these rooms and I have all this information. But my mistake was like I didn't invest in myself. Like, right? Like my key went up 10x. And if I'd bought a bunch of those, then I could do things like give them out to friends or like, say like, hey, like I'll sell you a discount copy if you can give me a copy of your key or something. But because I am like just playing with profits, I'm priced out of buying someone like you and things like that.
I actually I only own one of my own keys because I don't want to dump.
I know, biggest mistake I made.
No, I don't want to dump on my key holders. Like I'm super chill. I just don't want to ever be put, because for me that would be locked capital. Like I would never sell that. I couldn't just dump on my followers.
You don't have to dump. You could give them to friends that want to be in your room.
How though?
Right?
Can you send them? You can't send them, right? You can't. They're not transferable.
You should be able to.
I think they're transferable.
No. They should be, right?
No, they're not. If they were transferable, then there would be like a ton of shit built on top where you could just swap them OTC. I don't think they're transferable. They're not NFTs.
I thought people were building a bunch of stuff on top.
Yeah, because Unibot.
No, the only way
Unibot came out and allowed like users who don't have Friend.Tech accounts to be able to trade.
Yeah, you could do that. I did that. That was my biggest mistake. I did that the first 2 weeks. I wasn't trading off my phone. I was trading off of my hardware wallet. There's other tools that have enabled people to do that. It's nothing new. Like you can buy at the contract level. That's fine, but it's not. It's just basically bypassing the need to sign in with a Twitter. But if you do that, then you don't accumulate the airdrop points. So that's why I stopped doing that. I would probably have way more points because I traded like a lot of size, way more size on those accounts the first 2 weeks. So I'd probably have more points than I have now. And then when I realized this after 2 weeks, I was like, okay, I sold everything on the other accounts and I just sent everything to my main account. But no, they're not. You can't transfer them. That's the problem. So yeah, buying your own keys. Yeah, I mean,
you're also aggressively being watched as well too. So Blau over the weekend dumped a bunch of his keys and left the platform, saying he didn't really like it. He sold his keys. He profited 1.2 ETH, and he also made 3.8 ETH from the trading fees. Crypto Twitter was up in arms about it. He said he was going to donate the full value of his keys to charity. Essentially, like, I'm going to dump on my followers and take their funds and then give it away to charity. I think he said later that he could always send it back.
Yeah, that's so weird, man. Like, I didn't understand that. Like, okay, I think he had an issue with the AMM. I think he was. I'm assuming he was advised that the AMM thing like might put him in legal trouble or something.
Mm-hmm.
But like, why, when you come to the realization, you make the announcement that you're gonna leave the platform and then you dump all your own keys? So you're basically dumping on your followers, and then they're panic selling. I mean, if he makes them whole, that's great. But I don't know how you can account for, because you know what I mean. Like, once if you take a snapshot, I guess that could be
Yeah,
something.
I
And then
think
you
that's
just
what he
reimburse them
did. Yeah,
the
he
ETH.
did
But
take
there
a
was someone
snapshot.
else.
Yeah.
There was someone else who was doing like a Friend.Tech index, and
Yes,
he did
I
the
saw that,
same
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did the same thing, and he just dumped all his keys, and you're like, okay, like what the hell?
Yeah,
That's
I
why
mean,
I'm saying, like, I would never dump my keys. So I only have one key. So you know, it's like, if people suffer from my key price dropping, it's not going to be because of me.
well, I think that's probably what we're going to see once the airdrop happens. Is like, you know, the vibes are great now because everything is going up, but like, what happens when people are like aggressively tracking self sells of your own keys? Like, once you get the airdrop and people just leave, like, I think keeping the vibes good enough to keep people to stay is going to be difficult at that point, because, you know, we're going to see a lot more of these posts.
I'll stay.
Yeah,
Like,
of course.
I mean, I legit
I
don't care about the airdrop, and I'm in some good rooms.
I agree, and like I don't want to say I'm bull posting quite a lot on Friend.Tech. Like I'm creating a lot of content around Friend.Tech, and I'm super bullish on it midterm. I do think that the airdrop is the first significant event. I think there will be like a massive sell-off and unwind, maybe let's say like a month before the airdrop. I don't know. There will be a point at which one whale will blink and will cause some sort of cascade when they don't think it's worth staying in the like farming the last month. So everyone who participates in Friend.Tech and is like heavily invested or whatever should be aware of that. And obviously, with all this 3-3 that we're doing now, as soon as someone sells, everyone else sells, right? So I'm sure there could be an unwind. At the same time, it's paradigm, and I also think this is the first proper example of SocialFi that actually occupied mindshare and is getting a lot of activity. So I'm sure they'll come up with something to preempt that. Of course, probably activity will die down. I don't know if you guys have seen CL's valuation posts, which look a bit crazy. Like, they look insane. But then I think, okay, like, this guy, I don't think he would like post for engagement at this point. Maybe he actually believes that. So there will be ups and downs. People shouldn't definitely not risk more than they're willing to lose. And I do think that if TVL continues going crazy like this, there will be a point where instead of exiting via the airdrop, people will just exit via their keys.
Yeah,
because their keys will have appreciated so much in value that they will just take that exit rather than waiting for the airdrop. So nobody knows. It's a fun experiment. I think people, like, we all see the drawbacks and the risks. I hope people see the risks. But I think also people are discounting that this is a new sector entirely. I've heard rumors that they're raising another round of investment. I think they're discounting the simplicity of this. They're discounting the fact that it's on Base. Coinbase itself is incentivized to push this. It's easy for them to push user onboarding. And I think the biggest thing of all, there's probably a lot of projects that are going to be building on top of this that we don't know of yet. So
that's a good point.
there's bull arguments and bear arguments. I have no idea where it goes. I would like to think, obviously I'm biased. I have like almost 100 ETH now in Friend.Tech. Like, of course I'm biased, and I'm putting out a lot of content around it. I'm super invested to it. I'm biased, and I don't realize maybe a lot of things. I would like to think that I would keep using it because there's loads of rooms that I just tune in because like I want to see the info, and it's not like Friend.Tech related info. So I think I'm gonna keep using it even after the airdrop. I'm pretty sure I will. But I don't know. I cannot know how the activity will be impacted because obviously like 70% of other people might just drop off completely and not be active anymore, and then it might not be as fun as it is now. But
Mhm.
what we can do is just play it until then, see how it goes, and yeah, I think it's
So-
exciting, but obviously, it's a social media network. Social media networks are just, the
hard.
probability
Yeah.
of them being successful is extremely, extremely low. So you
Well,
have to be
I
aware of
think
that.
every social media network has a half-life. If you look at like the successful ones like Facebook, they had a very long half-life. I think Friend.Tech looks to me like it's going to have a very long half-life. And then the ones that like are Threads and Mastodon have like a 1 week flash in the pan and then they're done. So I'm bullish
Yeah,
on
like or
Friend.Tech.
Clubhouse.
Yeah,
You're right.
Clubhouse.
And I think in particular, Friend.Tech has an opportunity which no other Web3 social media network has had before to onboard normies. Like I think they could make like 1 or 2 tweaks to their app, rename ETH to like friend dollars, and get like regular people on board. So I think that there's like a $6 billion like market, sorry, 6 billion person market that they could potentially address.
Yeah, I mean, everyone fixates on what it is now, but they could offer now. It's just like this could be like the top of the top of the funnel, like the high ticket items, right? And then you could introduce other stuff that people pay for and make it all
Yeah, like
super like slick, and like, for
yeah,
example, I was asking this in my room, like, what if you could do spaces on Friend.Tech, but actually only gate them to your room, or do a collaboration with like 5 other rooms, and only people in those rooms can access the spaces. That would be
to be
sick.
honest,
And you can like charge like 5. Yeah, go for it.
as soon as the UI starts improving is the moment I'm selling. Because if it's a garbage UI, as far as I can tell on the inside, and it's still seeing some viral growth, which is like really clear sign of product market fit. As soon as they're like needing to polish the inside because growth has died off, like that's when I sell off.
Dude, that's a really good point. Like that's one of the reasons I bet big on it, because I was using it and I could see value in it, but everyone was dismissing it because the app was crashing all the time. And I was like, okay, sure, but surely that's something that can be fixed in a few days, right?
Right.
Like even now, I'm in 100 chats and it's a fucking nightmare to. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse or not. It's a
No, you can't.
nightmare to.
When it comes to
It's
the
a
rooms,
nightmare.
it's apt.
Yeah, it's a nightmare to scroll through everything. Like I don't even have like favorites or like an ability to pin or create folders. And
Yeah, but a feed would be trivial to create. So like there's such low hanging fruit. I'm with you.
yeah. So yeah, I'm with you on this one. Like I'm bullish on it. Like midterm, next few months, at least.
And what's the vibes been like for the like normie accounts? So we had the wave of OF girls coming. Are they still here? Is it sticky for them, or did they go back where they have their like subscription month to month revenues instead of like depending on trading revenue for earning income?
No, that was just like a fad, like 1-2 days. I mean, I know there's people who are onboarding celebrities. So we actually had
That's
someone
how it starts.
on we had someone on our spaces on Friday. This guy Eddie, who's this like photographer in LA, worked on some like huge Lyft campaign back in 2016, and has been working with like tops, like even worked with LeBron and stuff like that. Like he knows a ton of celebrities in LA, and he said he's gonna like onboard them. I know there's if you guys know Manifold Trading, the guys that helped CL snipe his own account, they're actually getting a lot of interest now from celebrities or like people with a following who want to also snipe their own accounts. And I actually think that should be something that every account benefits from, because nobody wants to be botted like in the first 50 keys or something. Steve Aoki joined, but with these accounts, they really fizzle out. If you don't, like, I sold Steve Aoki because like I asked him, I wrote like cake me in the chat and he didn't reply. He didn't reply for like 2-3 days. I was like, okay, screw this. Like he's not going to be active. Maybe he will be at some point, but if they're not active, you don't really feel like staying in there, especially since at the beginning they're very volatile because people just like everyone piles in from FOMO and then they just sell it off. So yeah, I think there's lots of new people that could join the platform, but it really depends how active they are and how much value they give. Like one of the ones that I hope I'm not gonna sell is if you guys know Bob Vulgaris, Harala Bob.
Oh, he's
Like
on there.
he joined like, yeah, he joined like 5 days ago. I think his key is like 0.6, 0.7 ETH right now. He's kind of active. Like he replies to stuff. People ask him questions. It's super cool, dude. For like 0.6 ETH, the guy is like extremely, extremely sharp, and you get to ask him questions and stuff. So
Were you asking
that's
about
one.
picks?
Dude, he actually, like, people ask him. He said he's gonna share like some betting picks, some NBA betting picks.
That's worth it. I mean, like $800 to get like direct picks from Haralabob, or like get like probability analysis on your picks. I mean, that's worth it.
Yeah. I mean,
And it's like
as long as it doesn't go for it.
Oh yeah, it's like the classics of Web 2 playbook. Like much worse social networks have gotten like random B-list celebrities on there and done good. So I think Friend.Tech could be a big one.
Yeah, and then there's all the stuff that I know they're working on, and they said the app is going to change significantly in the next few weeks, months, etc. So I think a lot of changes are coming. So I'm here for the long haul.
Yeah, and TVL is
For
still
now.
small. I mean, we just looked at that chart. It's $35 million. I mean, honestly, in the grand scope of like TVL peaks across crypto, like it could do another 10x in TVL, and we wouldn't bat an eye.
I mean, Crypto Yield Info was the first one to point out that it's kind of like a yield farm when it was like 6 million TVL. And yeah, the thing is, it's really hard to put money into this thing because it's still a hot wallet on your phone, right? Like it's not a hardware wallet. So I'm guessing a lot of funds, a lot of like whales are kind of hesitant to put a lot of money into it. So that's probably why it's harder for people to chime in. But also, like, I'm all here for it. I hope TVL doesn't like skyrocket. Even though we had like a dip on Friday, everyone's like, oh, there's a sell-off. It went from like 22k ETH or something, or 21k ETH or something, or just over 20k ETH to like 19k ETH, and now it's at like 23k ETH. So like,
yeah,
what dip?
Still.
Like barely a dip.
Yeah, there was no dip. Yeah. Yeah. So right now there have been $6 million cumulative transactions, 6,658 ETH of total protocol fees. Let me just bring up the Dune dashboard. And it's actually, I mean, it had that. I remember that first peak, and I was like, wow, that's kind of nice in the first days. I thought it may be done after that last peak that we had, but this last one that we've had has really kind of surpassed the previous inflows. So it's good to see inflows coming. They kind of go up and down, right? So it'd be interesting to see if there's going to be like sustained inflows going forward.
So all I see with this chart is like you're combining two cyclical charts. You have the kind of like Web3 boom bust cycles, like the Bitcoin halvening cycles, but taking place on compressed time. So like, Friend.Tech bubble, Friend.Tech bear, Friend.Tech bull. And then on top of that, you see like the overall growth curve generally going up. Higher dips in between, larger troughs, larger peaks in the middle. So I still think that this is growing, but like I think you can really keep an eye on this chart to get a sense of when it might be actually tapering off.
Yeah. And everything still looks good. I mean, buyers still are outstripping sellers, and but highly profitable for the people that come in and can do well. I mean, look at that. That's a small number, but $10 million of protocol fees paid out, half that paid to the key holders themselves. That's pretty good, if you're able to monetize correctly.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap it up. I know you we're running a little bit late for you. You had a call that started 10 minutes ago, but Dragos, thanks for coming on and giving us the rundown of everything that's happening in Friend.Tech right now.
Cheers, guys. No worries. We do spaces twice a week, so if you guys want, I get all the top people on Friend.Tech to join. So we discuss, like, we do one on Tuesdays, 1 p.m. Eastern, where we just discuss just like free flowing conversation about the meta. And then we do one on Fridays whenever the points drop. So whenever the points distribution happens, we go live and we just try to figure out what happened, etc. So yeah, if you guys are interested, follow me on Twitter and join the spaces. Should be fun.
Just did. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers, guys. I'm gonna bounce.
All right. Thanks. Well, Garrett, in other news that we had this week, we had also Coinbase. We talked about Friend.Tech on Base, but now we want to talk about Coinbase as a company. Coinbase has been called out and is in a little bit of, I guess, hot water, if you want to call it, for its actions in light of the Curve the hack that happened. So if we can all remember that a few weeks ago, I mean, it feels like a long time ago already, Curve was hacked, and one of the victims of that hack was Alchemix, where they had several thousand ETH that was stolen from their contracts and then dumped through the market. One thing that happened during that time, during these attacks or exploits, is that the validator, or sorry, the MEV person or attacker, exploiter, or whatever you want to call them, they didn't actually make that much money, right? So this bot came in, or this attacker exploiter came in and was able to take 7,500 or 7,259 ETH and 4,822 alt ETH. This was like the first exploiter. Then a second exploiter came in and took 3,854 alt ETH and then sold it into the curve pool. However, according to CryptoGle, he only profited 43 ETH because he paid a tip, which is kind of the tips are the way that you get to the front of the validator queue, or the like processing queue. Like you want to get your transaction in, you pay a higher tip. So this exploiter paid a tip of 570 ETH, which went to Coinbase as a tip. And so CryptoGle says that, okay, hey, you would expect that Coinbase, a US company that is running these nodes, to return the ETH. Unfortunately, Victor Bunin, who runs this at Coinbase, has yet to give any answer to this, essentially saying no, that they're not going to do this, and they're not going to return this $1 million back to the victims. And so they've had this call. They've been going back and forth. Another MEV bot, which was a white hat during this whole curve exploit, returned 90% of the funds after realizing they were stolen. And so CryptoGle is asking, why can't Coinbase do the same?
I would like to comment on this. I think I'm a bit too close to the subject to feel comfortable issuing comment, unfortunately. I think you summed up very well.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get into, there's a lot to actually unpack here. And maybe we can talk about this not in like a more broad sense, right? So if should these LSD validators, when these exploits happen, they have access to these funds and they can return it. Coinbase is using the argument that they have this, what's it called? Safe harbor that they need to protect. Essentially, I think their reasoning that Coinbase is using is that if Coinbase gives back the money, which they can do, it's stolen money, and typically when money is stolen, it's usually returned, right? Like even if you're a bank, if a bank did this transaction for a criminal and the bank profited from those criminal activities, they would have to return those funds. It's just the simple process of that. But with the Coinbase situation, they're taking a more hands-off view and saying, oh, look, we didn't have any control over the transactions at the time. And then in this kind of like post-state, yes, we have those funds, but it would be detrimental to us and potentially opening us. Well, I think I know what their main argument is, and what they're not saying is that if they gave that money back, it would open them up to probably a ton of regulatory actions against them in the future for all transactions that are being processed by their LSDs. So if they return this $1 million and said, hey, here you go, we're doing you a good one and giving you this $1 million back, the SEC or whatever sort of law enforcement 3-letter agency could come to them in the future and point to them and say, hey, your validators enable this transaction. You need to refund the money to us, or we're going to seize it, right? Like you need to start running like heavier AML protections on all these transactions that you're running. And essentially it would be used as a backdoor way to shut down Coinbase's LSD offering, probably pretty quickly as well too. And so I think that's a legal quagmire that they don't want to open up. And I think everybody knows that the right thing to do is probably return the funds, but Coinbase can't do it because it would just, it would be potentially the end of their LSD offering, and they don't want that. So very, very difficult situation to be in. I don't know what the answer is. And
yeah, what you're saying makes sense. I run a validator, and like my last validator tip for running it was like 0.2 Ethereum. Like, is it my job to now go through and like look through every transaction and make sure that none of them went through North Korea and return the ones that did? Like, I probably should. It's just for 0.2 ETH. That's like $300. Not really worth my time to go through and do that accounting. So I don't know what the cutoff is or whatnot. I think there's like actually a small parallel where like you could argue that it was not a Curve hack, it was a Viper hack, and thus like Curve has no obligation to return any user's money. So you could advance that argument.
But Curve didn't profit. I mean, like we're not talking about the money that Curve made here. We're talking about the funds that a random
If I could finish my analogy, like Curve had no obligation, but Curve is like working to refund users out of its pocket because it's like the right thing to do, right? Like sometimes like obviously Curve has a vested interest in making people whole. Coinbase couldn't care less, but I still think there is an argument that is the right thing to do, and it would be great for the ecosystem if we do see Coinbase kind of step up and do something they don't need to do.
Yeah, unfortunately,
I don't know the answer. It's tough.
If the regulatory legal landscape was clear and there was clear defined rules around offering these LSD products, I think that they probably would have returned it. But in this opaque environment where every single action that they're doing could potentially be used against them in future cases, like doing something, inaction is probably like the way to go here for them.
I think there's even like similar dilemmas, right? Like Coffee Babe sent money back to Curve, like, and then Curve would send money back to Coffee Babe. If it would have been like way easier probably if Coffee Babe had just kept the money, but then like those two transactions themselves both carry like questionable like circumstances around it. Like, because what if Coffee Babe's in North Korea or whatever, right? I don't think that's the case,
but this is not going to be the end, right? With Coinbase unilaterally running the base network, they are profiting from every single transaction that occurs on those networks. And they have full control of the keys, and they run that L2 themselves. It's not decentralized. It's fully run by Coinbase, which is a public company run in the US. And so there's an argument to be made that when Coinbase profits from like scams and other like hacks and other things where their sequencers are making money, it's the same instance here. And so I think there's going to be some broad issues that are going to be in play over the next 6 months. Like this could be like the next legal meta for people to go after Coinbase for. Again, like without clear rules and regulations around these like LSDs and what needs to happen with these L2s, it's going to be very dicey going forward.
It's always Gensler's fault in the end, right?
No, I don't think it's Gensler's fault. Gensler's just there to like enforce the laws that he's been given in the way that he thinks. And I think the issue is that without Coinbase essentially has like a very wide latitude of what it can operate in. It could say, hey, like, no, we don't need to do anything here because we have a hands-off method of how we run these LSDs. Like the validators themselves are not responsible for the transactions that take place. And there's also no guidance given by the feds yet about what happens if you, like the people that run transactions for North Korea for like Lazarus Group or something, right? Like, are those transaction fees need to be frozen somehow? Like, do you need to like dox validators? It's a whole can of worms that just like is not ready to be opened yet, and I don't think anybody wants to deal with it yet.
No, I mean, I just know my perspective is like I'm a Curve person, so of course I want what's best for Curve. But like I super admit I'm biased on it. So of course,
but it's these slippery slope these slippery slope arguments that I'm making around like the validators are responsible for essentially freezing funds post fact or post transaction. In case there's any criminal activity that takes place. This is like the backdoor way that you have like full AML regulatory capture for validators, where in order to run a validator inside the United States, you have to essentially dox yourself, provide KYC, and have like full monitoring of that validator in case any sort of criminal transactions take place, so that you can be held liable and the funds can be returned through some sort of legal action. I mean, that sounds really bad. Again,
I know, right? Let's see if we can get Plato on the show to help us get through these philosophical quandaries.
I mean, this is the argument that for Bitcoin, right? That Bitcoin can never know, and there's no way to. I mean, like they could valid, like miners don't have to pick up certain transactions, but they never know the identities or anything else about the validators, and plus, like the way that the proof of work system works in choosing validators is much different than proof of stake consensus. And then proof of stake consensus is potentially opening up to these huge regulatory regimes. And so Congress needs to do something quickly, very quickly, at the end of the day. I actually feel better about things. Like the past 2 weeks had kind of gotten me down with all the Fed news that we had. But I do think that we have enough builders and mindshare in the space that we're going to be able to build out of it somehow. And that, if you look at it from like a prisoner's dilemma perspective, not every country can crack down in the draconian ways that the US wants to. And there's always going to be a country that opens up and allows for like hosting or other parts of the system to be able to run in the long term. So, we'll see.
Yeah, plus numbers up, so that makes everyone feel good.
Yeah. Okay. Mark Cuban's wallet was drained for $870,000 over the weekend. Apparently, he clicked some wrong links or entered his private key. He must have entered his private key in somewhere. I think he got some emails from MetaMask saying that there was issues. And so his wallet was.
Can I see your seed phrase, please?
Exactly. Apparently, the hackers didn't really realize that he had $2.5 million on Polygon, so that was able to be recovered. But it just highlights the ongoing issues of owning your own private key and running EOAs. Like account abstraction can't happen fast enough, and hopefully, issues like this resolve themselves in the future differently.
The thing that I took away from the story is he said he hadn't logged into his MetaMask in like a year or 6 months or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of forget how long we've been in this bear market where there's a lot of people who might have participated and dabbled back when things were going up and just they've been out, right? Like I think of all the people that used to be on my feed and it's kind of tough to notice who's not missing. But just it's so empty nowadays.
Yeah. And then we got a couple of things, project updates to wrap up on. So Optimism announced that any unclaimed OP from the first airdrop is going to be distributed directly to addresses. It's going to be about 49 million OP, which is about $68 million being sent out. Arbitrum claims for their airdrop are going to last until 10 days from now, until the 24th of September. Or wait, no, next week. Today's the 18th. So next week. And 72 million ARB, or about $58 million, remains unclaimed. And then also Spark Protocol is increasing its debt ceiling from 200 million DAI to 400 million DAI. And the last project update that we have is Prisma Finance, who we had on just the other day, raised its mkUSD debt cap by another $10 million, and that was filled within 2 hours.
Congrats, team. Good stuff.
Yeah. So that's going to wrap it up for today. It was nice to have Dragos on and then also talk about this Coinbase stuff as well, too. And DeFi Advisor, we miss you in spirit. We will see you back tomorrow. And Garrett, always good to see you on a Monday morning.
Likewise. As DeFi Advisor would say if he was here, take care, friends.
Yeah. Thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow for Tuesday. Bye, guys.